So I guess it was around December. Jack comes to me and says, "Hey, why don't you give a kind of refresh on where you were at, where you've been tracking your journey." So you can give a refresh check. And of course, what movie was released around December that's hugely popular, of course, and kind of gave away a little bit, Sorry, Star was released. So thought I'd give it an intro I've never tried before. Let me know if this works for you or not. I'm here to talk to you today about our progressing journey towards DevOps, and I'll talk to you about what that means to even be DevOps. In fact, that is the focus of my deck. We'll get into what you're led to believe, what I've learned along my journey, what people want you to believe so that you spend money with them, and what's really important, and the process to go about that. So, first of all, to give you a little bit of update, I'm going to recap on where I've been, and I'm going to intermix the progress that we've made along the way and it's part of this. So this is a little different than the way I've approached this in the past. To give you the express background, not to bore the people that have seen this twice now, I've been at Healthstream for over 10 years now. The company itself is over 25 years old. Our goal is really to make a difference in healthcare. We have various solutions, some real game changers to really drive better outcomes in healthcare. It's actually a really exciting company to work for. The culture, and I'm not going to give you too much of a sales pitch, but the culture and the values of the company from top down are what have kept me there for so long. And I was having a discussion with Jason and a few others earlier today about the tenure of an employee that we have. I've got somebody reports to me that's been around for 25 years. He went to high school with the CEO. Several people, in the over 10-year mark. And I think that speaks a lot to our culture. And you'll see the culture's appealing throughout this deck as we progress. But 10 years ago, I came into Healthstream, and we were doing some kind of neat things for 10 years ago. We were just adopting an Agile Scrum model for our SDLC. We were just implementing unit tests. We just convinced the business that, hey, spending time on something that doesn't really provide customer value, even though it does, is worth doing. Along those same lines, we're writing QA automation from the application layer. So we're really trying to kick off these types of movements 10 years ago. In 2013, I was wrapping up a project, one of the larger projects at Healthstream, and at the time, developers would say things like, it takes me, all day to deploy my code into my environment, and you can't jump between test environment and test environment with any consistency because your SME had to be there, which meant that QA had no idea how to regress something that they weren't on the team developing. So I wrote a simple batch script and some SQL scripts, and that actually built out an environment in relatively short order. Back then it was 4 hours, it's now going to be like an hour or something like that. But what it did was it gave a lot of consistency, more consistency than we had seen in the past. In addition to, now we went from a week of getting something set up for testing to half a day. So what we did was we recognized that and said this is worth pursuing, and we formed a configuration management department. And the simple goal or the vision of configuration management for us is to reduce the friction in getting code from development to production. So you can see that kind of spans the whole life cycle of product from typing it in on the dev's keyboard to getting value from the customer. And the momentum continued slowly, but it did continue, and that's a key. We're a large company. In fact, one of our biggest challenges is our size and scale. We have about 5 million, give or take, end users that hit our system over the course of a year or two. Thousands of hospitals and organizations that leverage us in some way or another, and we're always moving. The train is always in motion. In fact, we actually call our deployment processes that there's a train thing. We have bullet trains and monorails and hyperloops. And they all have different variations on them. But the point is, we're always moving. We have a zero downtime deployment process. And with our terabytes of data, sometimes that gets a little interesting how you pull that off. But we keep the pedal down, and so that inhibits some of this change because we have to consider interruption to our users. We have to consider all the people that it takes to keep us moving in that direction. So the fact that momentum is continuing is really exciting to me. I'm always a proponent of change. I always wish I could snap my fingers and make it happen overnight. But the fact of the matter is you don't want it to happen that fast. Because of culture, because of your people. Change in digestible chunks. That's a quote that I've been known to use in our company. But at this time, recognizing these things, of course, DevOps was the buzzword, right? So I'm looking into DevOps thinking, well, how can this help us? There's so much here. Let me figure out what this actually means to be DevOps. So what is DevOps? There's a plethora of definitions out there, right? How many of you have actually just Googled, just on a whim, what is DevOps? There is no consistent definition, right? You get responses from, or you get hits from tool vendors. Of course, when you buy their tool, you're DevOps, right? Of course. All it takes is a couple $100,000 and suddenly you're DevOps. Who wouldn't do that? You've got industry leaders like Martin Fowler, who has maybe a more academic version of it. But the point is, there's no consistency. And in reality, you've got to make DevOps, you've got to interpret it to whatever it means for your organization. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I came up with my own definition. It has context where I'm at in my organization. And we'll look at that. So my definition, DevOps is an approach to delivering software that enhances quality and cycle time through a culture of collaboration, empowerment, and continuous improvement. And there's a lot of powerful words in there, so let's look at a couple of those. Collaboration. I am huge on perspectives, and you'll see a theme in this deck about perspectives. I truly believe the more minds and the more perspectives that you put towards a solution, the better solution you're going to get. That's why I kind of added that in there. But those different perspectives are really important, especially for the theme that we're going to talk about. Empowerment. So ownership, responsibility, and accountability, very important things, especially when you're talking about moving an organization forward, but also when you're trying to drive change. If you have nobody owning, if you have nobody accountable, if you have no ownership, those things aren't going to move. And then continuous improvement. Change is rampant in our industry, right? In fact, technology is changing on a daily basis. If you're not adapting, if you're not continuously improving, you're going to get left behind. That's just the way it is. In fact, with society as it is today, with business as it is today, business is always changing. You know, we have a very large product offering, but there are a lot of little startups out there that are really looking to take business away from us. And they're focused on one thing. So they might be able to move a little faster on that one thing than we can. But we have a broader offering. So there's always that risk out there. So we also need to get better. We need to be able to adapt faster. And that's really why DevOps and a DevOps culture, just gave away something there, is really important. So everybody recognizes this. I just talked about it, right? It's some people call it the Deming cycle. Some people call it the plan, do, check, act cycle. It's really just about continuous improvement. You should always be going through this cycle of everything you do. In Agile Scrum development, we do retrospectives. Why? Because we're trying to improve, right? That's the check part, and then the act part is actually implementing those things you found. You always need to be reevaluating where you're at and what your processes are and where your people are at. That market is always changing, and we need to keep up, and this is the way to do it. So this was year one when I was starting looking at DevOps and trying to communicate what it meant to me. But I had a light bulb moment. Everybody has those every once in a while, right? For me, they're not often anymore. You can ask my wife about that, or I don't have ideas anymore. But I did condense my definition into 2 words. and they need more to me now than they ever have in the past. DevOps is just about failing fast. That's it. It's a cultural change so that we can move faster and be more efficient at what we do. Empowerment, collaboration, continuous improvement are really wrapped up into that, because you can't do that without those things. The faster you fail, the less costly your failure is going to be. So think about this. We're a software development shop. So somebody puts a kind of a major bug in the code. If you catch it in the development cycle, more than likely it's the developer might nudging the guy next to him and say, oh my gosh, I almost let that go, right? But I caught it, it's not out there. But imagine what happens if that got all the way to production, the cost of that defect, what it could be. You could lose a customer, or many customers based on that. That's very expensive. That's a small example to help demonstrate why failing fast is so important. Failures cost more than ones they get. So, DevOps, we've all seen this, right? People, process, tools, or technology. Hopefully you've all heard that. This is very important when you're considering a DevOps transition, because this is absolutely the order in which it should occur. Now, to demonstrate why this is the right order, let's look at it backwards, and let's put a Y in the place of the question marks. Or I'm sorry, the plus signs, right? So why do we have a process? Because of the technology. That doesn't really work, right? It's the wrong way. Why do we have these people? Because of our process. That's backwards. Normally, you're not going to form a company around a process you develop. The process comes from the people and culture. So if you go the other direction, of course, why do we have this process? Because of our people. They thought about it. This is the way they think it should be worked. Why do we have this technology? Because we need these processes. That's the right direction that you should be driving any type of change in this space. It really doesn't work in the opposite order. So let's look at these. And let's start with people, or call it culture. In 2013, Adrian Cockcroft, who was the principal architect of Netflix at the time, he made a statement on a blog that really stuck with me over the years. I'm going to paraphrase it, hopefully I don't butcher it. But he said that a large company with an established culture will find it nearly impossible to go through a DevOps transformation. And you can think about why he may have said that at the time. I do not subscribe to that theory. I think in today's day and time, such a transformation is not only inevitable, but if you can't make such a transition, you're going to fail. And not like fail fast, your company's not going to be able to survive. It is a different day and time with cloud technologies, with all these pressures that we have to move faster. This type of transition is absolutely imperative for us. Now, some of you may have smaller organizations, and as you know, cultural change is pretty easy when you're trying to influence 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people. When you have hundreds or thousands of people, it becomes a different ballgame, because there's a lot of momentum around the way of thinking where people are in alignment for so many years. These changes are not easy, and that's why I kind of call them cultural changes. Culture is not easy to change. You can do it, changing digestible chunks, but it is slower than normal. So I'm going to talk about a few of the cultural aspects that I found challenging in our transformation at Healthstream. Yours will be different, but these are not. So one of the biggest was silos, and Kevin and I were chatting about this a little bit before I started. Who has silos in an organization in some form or fashion? I'm sure every one of us could raise their hand, right? You're all nodding. Silos inhibit failing fast. Why? Because they're essentially virtual walls between groups. They inhibit collaboration, or at least introduce friction. So, in addition to introducing a little bit of friction between conversations, you can imagine that roadmap meetings are very interesting when you have groups with different priorities. Getting alignment on deliveries, whenever people were incentivized or prioritized in different ways, is very difficult. This is not a picture of our company. I just pulled it off the web. Our roadmap meetings are not possible. But it makes the point, right? You find friction, you're going to find difficulty when not everybody is marching to the same goal, or at least on the same timing. When those priorities don't meet, you're going to have problems. So those silos are really important to break down. For us, a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we had a bunch of disparate, well, I won't say disparate, but we had a bunch of dev teams that basically had their own backlogs. And trying to make progress on larger efforts was kind of difficult because every one of those teams had a different owner, and every one of those owners was trying to meet their business objectives. And so it really became kind of protective over those teams. I got to protect my team because I've got my deliverables to meet. And so every one of those teams became a little bit of a silo. There was no crossing the boundaries, and if you did, it was very rare. And inevitably, there was always something that got deprioritized that maybe wasn't customer-facing so that we could make some of our customer-facing objectives. When you think about technical debt, we actually have a team and a group now that's focused on not just technical debt, but engineering concerns that are customer-facing. Some years ago, that team would always get sacked to try to help out another team. They almost became a little bit of a bench, and that developed some technical debt. We couldn't pay it down fast enough. We've gotten much better. We actually have dedication on it now. But one of the things that we recognized in this model was that friction between the teams. So what did we do? We started knocking down some of those silos between teams just by forming them into larger groups. So instead of having a template team of 6 or 7 people in the Agile model of a cross-functional team, we now have what we call solution lanes, focused on different aspects of the business, but they were marching towards a common roadmap with the group. What's really cool about that model is before, where we had people in isolated, protected little groups, now we have things happening such as in this one group, if one team within that group is saying, man, for whatever reason, we're having trouble hitting this deadline. I've seen people swarm, which is what you want to happen. They swarm from what they were working on to kind of address that immediate concern. And then when that's addressed, the people that were on this project jumped over to this one. So it's a win-win situation, which is awesome. And I've seen that more than once in this model, which is really cool. You also have a little less work in progress because you got people not only swarming, but you got common roadmaps. You got some consistency. You got a little better communication within those groups. So reducing the number of silos was really important here. So in addition to that, we found that the Scrum template that we used to look at of the perfect 6-person team or a 7-person team to address a project wasn't exactly perfect. What's really important, it's not one size fits all, right? Development is in various scopes and t-shirt sizes, right? Why have a template team to address something? Sometimes all it really takes is, say, a developer and a QA to go off and do this little thing over here. We've gotten better about that. We have tiger teams now. All we need is somebody that can lead that effort, not an entire team necessarily. So now we've got, again, reducing that work in progress. As a group, they can focus on a few more things at a time because we're not prescribing the way that problem has to be approached. We're really letting people develop and deliver within that team. But what's also neat, when you consider that we're coming up with these tiger teams, we also recognize, as I discussed a moment ago, those larger efforts that might span what we call solution groups. Those you would think would still be difficult. But we've made a lot of progress, and now we actually have cross-lane teams forming for what were really their foundational projects. They're projects that have benefit to multiple solution groups. So let's get the perspectives of every one of those solution groups, every one of those areas of business. Let's get those together because they'll come up with a better solution that meets the needs for the entire business, not just one group focusing on it. We've also done a lot in integrating some of our traditionally siloed groups. So shared services, how many of you have shared services in your organization? They might be information services, like the desktop, could be infrastructure operations team, whatever it is. For us, our DBAs, our infrastructure team, those were 2 examples of silos. A few years ago, we started a design and UX discipline. So that kind of started out as a silo, but we've since started allocating the people in those shared disciplines to the teams. Why? Because now those individuals can align with the roadmaps, deliveries, and priorities of those teams. We've knocked down another silo. Now, it's not perfect. We're still working on that, but we've made huge strides in knocking down some of those shared services, all in the effort of making sure that we can deliver as quickly as possible or fail fast. Take the multiple perspectives in the room so that we can recognize issues before they make it upstream. Another thing we've done, I think I talked about this last time, but I haven't used this much lately, but I used this for a lot of discussions last year. So in the world of DevOps, you're now starting to hear for a little while now that it's now DevSecOps, right? But what this really said to me, and why I drew it and why I used it as examples, again, is just a visualization of multiple perspectives coming together for a better solution. Getting people ingrained in the teams. And for us, we have a security discipline that is not embedded in the teams just yet, but we're getting close to that. We actually have somebody that runs kind of a consultant. So every time a team gets ready to deploy something, we've got a set of questions and there'll be an interview, that kind of thing, just to make sure that everything, all the boxes have been checked from a security perspective. That works for us right now. Might not work for you, but that is, again, part of that evolution of failing faster so that we can head things to the before they become a real problem. So you can imagine in today's world of cybersecurity, if you miss something, it's going to be found. It's going to be found by those people that are out there just trying to exploit your business or trying to see if you have a bug bounty program or something like that. They're looking whether you realize it or not. So failing fast in that perspective is not an option. It's a given in today's world. So continuing along that cultural evolution, one thing I heard a lot early on, and I think we've made great strides to correct, is what I call the seed of negativity. You might find this in various forms, from I'm going to lose my job to I'm uncomfortable with this change, whether that's vocalized or not. But who's kidding who? Nobody likes change. Not me. Not everyone's comfortable with change, so you'll get some resistance. From this is the way it's always worked to that's going to cause some pain because I know we're going to stumble and fall along that journey for whatever the reason. When you're trying to implement change at this level, you're going to have some resistance, and that can manifest itself into what I call the seed of negativity. This starts out so innocent. This person nudges that person and says, "This isn't going to work. This is silly. This isn't the way we've done things." So pretty soon what you've got a weed garden fueled by manure, right? Because that's not true. Stay positive, but more importantly as leaders, stay in touch with everybody. Try to make some open door policy where people feel comfortable coming and talking to you and complaining to you, because as leaders we can weather that. There's always a nugget of truth when people come and complain. You just got, as leaders, we need to figure out what that is and have the right takeaways. But peer-to-peer negativity has a different effect, and it can be overwhelming at some point. It can really inhibit your growth. I will say that from our perspective, it wasn't as bad. It was early on, that fear of change, the moving the cheese, if you get that reference. It was kind of, I heard from more than one person, what does this mean for me in the future? I do this, but if we go this direction, that's not what I do now. You need to make people feel comfortable that there is a place. It's really not about what you do today. It's about the ideas you have, and it's about your ability to learn. That secures a place in a DevOps culture. Continuous improvement. We should never be stagnating. People's skill sets should not be stagnating either, because it's about continuous learning. So I think one thing we do really well now to kind of help with this is we've kind of regurgitated our IT, what we call the IT all-hands meeting. We used to have them quarterly, and then we kind of put them on pause for a little while, and we picked them up again. And this is really a forum for IT leadership to start talking about where we're going, what our vision is, what the business vision is. We might invite in special guests, like a business leader, to talk about their vision over their business segment. It might be, in right now, we're going through an evolution to a cloud model. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But there's a lot of discussion on what that means. We have a traditional monolithic application. It has done us very well over the last 10 years, but it's time to move to a different model. And so if you've got one type of model for 10 years, obviously people become comfortable with it, and your organization kind of rallies around that model to be as efficient as possible. Well, moving towards a cloud model is completely different. And so there's a lot of discussion on this, but it's good to see it's being open and transparent as a group. Because what happens when you're not open and transparent? People will start making things up the way they see them, right? That's how rumors spread. That's how false things start moving around, because it's the way people are interpreting things with lack of information. One thing we do really cool in this meeting is we have a tough questions segment. So I'll put a box out in a common area, and people can actually drop in a slip of paper anonymously. And I'll aggregate those before the meeting and pull them out of the box. And it's interesting to me, and actually welcome, the type of questions you will get when anonymity is involved. There are some people, and you all know who they are in your organizations, that are not scared to ask questions, right? But there are some people, in IT, if we were to stereotype, not everybody, there's somebody that will get up in front of somebody or expose themselves, with kind of a tough question or something like that. That anonymity is actually really, really refreshing, and we have fun with it, So our CTO will get up there and answer the best way he can without revealing anything that shouldn't be revealed to the larger audience. People can direct those questions to any of the IT leaders. It's really fun. I would encourage you to do something like that within your organization, because the people find it. I get so much great feedback on that meeting, and particularly the tough questions segment, because people feel heard, but more importantly, they're getting transparent information so that they're not making things up in that air gap of the lack of information. So let's talk about process. We've gone through people. This is one of my favorite slides in this deck. It's kind of lived on through every iteration. If you have the perfect tools, but you don't know how or why you're using them, then you're going to fail. Process is the same way. In that previous slide, people process technology. Don't start with the technology. Don't fall victim to the, and apologize if I offend any vendors in here, but don't start with the tools. Don't start with the people that say, if you just spend money with us, we're going to make you DevOps. It's not going to work that way. The cultural aspect alone means someone or something can't just fly in and make that happen for you. They might be able to give advice. They might be able to help you figure out what cultural aspects you're challenged with on a DevOps transformation or a fail-fast transformation, but the tools aren't going to do it for you. You've got to figure that out on your own. So for us, we're really focused on consistency across our test environments, continuing that momentum I talked about from our configuration management department. But now, since we're moving towards a cloud model, that's opened it up. We've got to figure out what the processes are to deploy and test code in a cloud model. And that's completely different from an on-premise model, of course. The best strategy for testing those cloud integrations, that's what we've spent the last year doing, but we now have a process for that. Now we're in the process, same process too. Now we have an implementation that we're working on now. The challenge for us of bridging that monolith to the cloud without interrupting our customer is not an easy one. We have a very highly active application. So, I mentioned, we have a zero-hour development model and things like that. So keeping that train moving forward while trying to go through such, figuring out these processes and how they work for us has been challenging, but we're making progress on it. We're continuing that momentum. It might not be your challenge. So QA and development are kind of blending now. Hopefully not in this creepy of a way, but what we're doing is we're recognizing that automation is key in a lot of this, developing those automation processes. We've had development automation for a while. I talked about unit tests. And we've had QA automation for a while from the top down on the application. But those two didn't merge as tightly as they're merging today. In fact, I was in a meeting a couple weeks ago where somebody in our QA department, one of our QA leads, actually asked the question, why do we have to cover this with our top-down integration tests? Why can't we cover that in unit tests? That's awesome. That means those groups are starting to look at the perspectives of each other for the greater benefit. In truth, there's no reason that unit tests can't cover what we might traditionally cover in integration tests. It's really about test scenarios. And so I don't normally try to put people on the spot. I'm not going to put an individual on the spot, but one thing I've done recently is I've moved from test case review meetings to test scenario review meetings. Who wants to take a crack and what the difference of those would be? Anybody?
Context.
Okay, yeah, in a way it is. What I found, all of our dev teams would have test case review meetings. Some teams are better than others, and when you're talking about perspectives, all perspectives on the team need to be considered when you're looking at your test cases. There's no role on that team that's been involved with product development and delivery that can't say, wait, I don't see a scenario that covers this. We should add that in. So a test case review meeting for us meant maybe QA and development sitting down and looking at the individual steps on how a test scenario was covered. And what was happening is people would stop attending those meetings because they were too detailed. People were zoning out and you were losing perspectives. So the test scenario meetings are really just high level, everyone participating, designers saying, hey, is that requirement covered? Dev saying, don't forget that even though there's no functional impact, we need to kind of regress this over here. The delivery manager saying, hey, we need to make sure that the way we roll this out or the way implementations uses this is considered with testing as well. All of those perspectives are very important. The individual steps, then whoever's accountable for that, and in our world, that would be our QA leads and the QA members of the team, they can go talk to the people they need to figure out the steps. But this was something we did specifically to make sure that all the perspectives, or as many perspectives as we could have involved, were looking at this and making sure we had full coverage. And QA is becoming comfortable with this. Dev is becoming comfortable with this because it's really, the whole team, because it's really about delivering quality. It's really about failing faster. Remember how far the defect makes it up the chain? The more costly it is. There are roles on the team that are accountable for certain things. What is the job of the entire team is the responsibility of the entire team to deliver a quality solution. So another thing we've done is we've started building our cloud guardrails. So this is a case where we intentionally introduced a silo into our organization for a brief amount of time. Whenever you're trying to figure something out, can you go, maybe sometimes you go read something and say, oh, that's the way I'm going to do it. But we're all technical people, right? What do? We go read something and then we try it out, right? And then as we try it out, as we're stepping through a code or looking at how something is reacting on a server or whatever, you realize, ooh, I need to change that. Otherwise, that's going to be a big problem. So figuring out our guardrails for cloud deployment is similar. We've got that group intentionally siloed for the past year, figuring out what it means to build those guardrails, those safety rails around cloud deployment. So that our dev teams can be self-enabled, self-service, to bounce off those guardrails knowing that we're still within the bounds of reason, right? They're still going to make a few mistakes and things like that, but we're keeping them within the lanes of these so that they don't do something that could either be a huge failure or put our company in jeopardy if you think about security or something like that. So now that team, that they've spent that time and they've deployed a few things, and now we've recognized that the silos start to hurt us, we're ready to roll out those guardrails to the entire development organization so that we can start failing faster as a group. But going through that was necessary so that those guardrails were appropriate for us. So I want to talk about technology now. And I want to talk about You've heard me talk about the monolith that we have in our core application, in our migration. We're migrating to a cloud technology and architecture. Late last year, I'm still not living in 2020 yet, sorry. Late in 2019, we had our first integration, our first at-scale integration with our monolith and an in-house developed cloud application. So the PaaS group got that out there. The monolith teams flipped the switch to start calling those services, moving from on-premise APIs to the cloud-hosted APIs. And when we flipped the switch, the storms came. Our response times weren't the best. And it wasn't one thing, it was a little bit on one side, a little bit on the other. We thought we were prepared for this. We actually did load testing and things like that. And for various reasons, when you're on a monolith, you have different load patterns that are not entirely predictable come together, to make something great like CPU utilization. We experienced a lot of latency, but what did we do? We had a process in place to roll that back and get things back under control. So we were able to fail fast. This one made it to production, not the best. We didn't catch it in our test environments, but this wasn't a week-long process. This essentially took us overnight to get that back under control. And so our customers at least had minimized, there was a minimal pain for them. But what did we do? We went back after rolling that back and we immediately started to RCA. We had people looking through that code. We had people trying to figure out what went wrong. And we discovered a few things we could have done differently. So we went through the process again. We load tested in different ways. We made some code changes. We put some caching in place where we saw some latencies that we didn't anticipate. And what happened? We came back better, stronger, faster. And now that has been in production for quite a while now, happily humming along, which is awesome. We continuously improved. We failed fast, we continuously improved, and now we've got the value of that integration out there paying off. And that starts on the live our migration, right? That's like one big step for us. And what's really cool is what I'm finding in technology is we've gone over the past few years of saying, why do you want to build that in the cloud? Justify building that in the cloud. Because we hadn't done it yet, we weren't good at it, so it was a lot of speculative, we didn't have our guardrails up. Nowadays, we're saying, why are you building that on-prem? In fact, for one of our applications that runs kind of hot, you've really got to justify building on that application, expanding that application, because we're at a scalability limit. We can only horizontally scale that thing right now. And so we're parting it out, we're getting things out, building the cloud. So you've got to justify to me why you're trying to build it the old way rather than the new way. We've been exploring containers. And since my last update, I'm happy to say we have production containers out there. We haven't cracked this nut for our on-prem applications yet, but we know what we want to do to start. We've targeted a certain service that we think is going to be all the benefits you get out of containers, from efficiency to ease of update to kind of the way you can adjust on the fly. We know it would be applicable to that, but we haven't put up our guardrails for that on-premise management of those. But we're working on it. But the cool thing is, we've got some success in the cloud. We've got 2 business units right now that have cloud components deployed in the cloud. So we're going to learn from that and see if we can bring that down to our on-prem application. Providing consistency, providing efficiency, the automation around those things versus the way we deploy those services today. It's going to be, I anticipate to be better, maybe not. We'll let the people tell us and we'll let them develop a process for the on-prem model and see if it's successful. But we'll continuously improve and we'll figure out if that's right for us. Pipelines. So we moved to Azure DevOps from an on-prem TFS installation for source code, for builds and that kind of thing. And it was a little easier than I thought it would be, actually. We had to rebuild some things because we're on an older version of TFS. But oh my goodness, we put out the patterns for pipelines, and now everybody's a plumber. We have people building pipelines all over the place, which is good, because that's a self-service model. If configuration management was managing all of those, if our PaaS group was managing all the PaaS pipelines, you have more silos. but they put up guardrails. And teams are now building their own pipelines within those guardrails, which is awesome because we're now able to move a little faster than waiting on the different priorities from the other groups. Speaking of technology, we've implemented several tools to help us fail faster as well. Does anybody recognize this out of curiosity? New Relic, it's an application performance monitoring platform. It is awesome. It's not cheap, but I will tell you that in production, having this level of visibility that I didn't have 2 to 3 years ago, I don't know how I lived without this. If emergencies came up, I mean, we were just guessing at what it was. Maybe if we were lucky, the databases would show some latency or something because we were fooling around that. But something is continuously looking at our code, saying that is an anomaly. I'm going to give you the full stack trace that you can step through. Oh my goodness. So we've been learning on this tool. Our processes lend themselves to this tool. And so now what we've done is we've got alerting and monitoring set up in this. We've got Splunk. We've got a couple other tools that have alerts set up. And so what we've done is we've started to turn the tide of a reactive model of addressing customer concerns to more of a proactive model. All of those tools dump alerts. We use Microsoft Teams for collaboration. So they're dumping those alerts into Teams that everybody subscribes to. So this is my workforce monitor channel. And so I've got my entire development group subscribed to this. And so we have an on-call rotation. The people that are on call are expected to look at these when they pop up and at least coordinate with the SME or figure out what's going on. In this case, they knew about it. They already had a card in flight to address these types of errors. It wasn't customer impacting, so we were fine. But what's really important, and if you do something like this, don't let people alert on things that you don't act upon. Don't add noise. What happens when you have a channel like this and you have a bunch of noise? People start to ignore it. Oh, nobody ever says anything about that. So what happens when the real problem comes? It's probably going to get ignored and you're back into a reactive model. I will say, from a proactive standpoint, we had an issue identified yesterday in New Relic, actually, one of our alerts, where something bounced off a performance threshold. And what was really awesome about that, not that the problem was awesome, it was that we failed fast. You never want to catch these things in production, but this alert, the way it was set up, we jumped on what we call a P1 or a priority incident, and we talked about it as a group. Customers weren't calling about that. We noticed it and we addressed it before the customers ever felt it. That's what this tooling can provide for you. But we have a process to address those tools. We had agreement from our people that such a process was necessary. You can see where I'm going. People, process, technology. Don't let your technology go upstream and drive the two P's. So, again, just to kind of wrap up my experience, one of our biggest hurdles continues to be our scale, both from people, from our application, from keeping our users happy and delivering more functionality without interruption. And so that cultural evolution is slow, but it's progressing. And we're making sure it's not stopping. Continuous improvement, continuing that drive, never letting up on that accelerator to keep this moving is very important. And I'm happy to say that even though not as fast as I want it to happen, it has not stopped. Again, that's what's important. For you and how you start this journey or how you continue, I can't tell you that. Your journey is going to be your own, and you're going to have to figure it out given your own cultural aspects, given your own silos in your organization, given your own, the way you're formed, your own shared services. Whatever's stopping you, you need to figure that out. Whatever's slowing you down from a fail-fast approach, you got to figure that out. I can't give you the 12-step program. I can't say if you do these things, you're going to be DevOps. Don't let anyone else tell you that either. The tools don't drive it. People, process, technology, in that order. And how you do it is entirely dependent upon your organization. Hopefully, maybe you've seen some things I've talked about in my journey that have clicked with you. Oh yeah, we've got that. Oh, that's an interesting approach to it, whatever. But it's going to mean something for you. But what I would encourage you not to do is ready, aim, fire. Start with your people and your culture. Figure out what you're trying to improve. DevOps for DevOps' sake is not DevOps. You need to figure out those things in your organization you're trying to improve, rally your people around them, get agreement from the top down that these are the things we need to improve, and then figure out how to measure them. If you can't measure them, you don't know if you're improving or not. I think I hear the most, when people are looking at DevOps, I hear the most about cycle time or lead time, one of the two, maybe both in some cases. But it's really about reducing that window of your iterations. That's something that should be easy to measure. Hopefully you're all keeping, maybe if you're agile, you're keeping cards and the amount of time that it takes to move through each stage and things like that. Maybe not. Maybe you need to do something like that. But I would encourage you not to do this just to say to do it, but to figure out what's important to you in your organization, measure it, and then figure out your processes. Then figure out your tool. And I feel confident in saying that if you take things in that order, you will be successful. Also, you heard me say changing digestible chunks. I guess I'm probably known for crawl, walk, run. I say it a lot at Healthstream. Some people have created acronyms. They think it's funny to say CABR. Which is fine. But the point here is, don't try to ram this all down at once. You can't snap your fingers at cultural change. The smaller your organization is, the faster you're going to do this because you have fewer minds to convince, to align. But if your organization is larger, it's going to take a little time. Don't try to cram it because people will not own the solution. As leaders, you know this. If you go to somebody and say, do this, they may resist, especially if they don't agree with it. If you can convince them it's the right thing to do, and then you tell them to do it, they're going to own it because they're probably passionate about it because they agree with it. Same thing with the DevOps transformation. Same reason why you identify what you're trying to improve up front, and then try to sell it that way, because you need people to agree that it's the right thing to do. It's not going to work if you don't start with people. So, you can see where I'm getting at here. Your journey is going to be your own, but make it yours. Figure it out, because again, in today's world, in today's business culture, you're always going to have the pressure to be faster. And if you can crack this enough in your organization, you will move faster. You will fail faster. Your failures won't cost as much. That's why this is important. At least that's why it's important to me. So hopefully I've given you some food for thought. What questions can I answer?
When you were talking about your teams, your collaboration, all the boxes moving around, do you have a tool that you use to facilitate all that? Is that all Microsoft Teams to facilitate the workload, or is it Jira? Or
so our roadmaps start in a product called Miro, and it's really kind of a collaboration tool, right? And so I heard yes somewhere, somebody knows about it. That's what our business side uses to kind of get the bigger vision. And with multiple business leaders, they can kind of see the other's vision and roadmap and things like that. And then as that gets translated, that is made available to the teams. But once that gets translated into, say, epics and stories, we're using Azure DevOps to track that at the team level. But the roadmaps themselves, the visionary business roadmaps, are tracked in a product called Miro.
So, you said something about letting the teams build their own pipelines. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in hearing more about that, because that's a hot topic where, do you create the pipelines for each team and who maintains it?
So what we've done, again, I mentioned configuration management in our platform group. They built out the template pipelines or the guardrails for the respective deployment areas, right? And so now what happens is if you've got a new component being deployed, more than likely we have a template to do that. And so the team deploying that new component will take that template pipeline and they'll change it, whatever makes sense for what they're doing. We use Octopus for deployments, and some of our dev teams will even get into creating Octopus deployment scripts for that, but then get kind of code reviewed by our config management team and our infrastructure team, because they both have a hand in getting code to our production infrastructure. But that's really what I mean, is you set up the guardrails, and everybody understands what those guardrails are, then it's a matter of cloning this pipeline and let me change the variables or the parameters or add the steps I need.
So your environments are all dynamic, like you just create when you need it, and that's what the pipeline would be.
That's exactly right. So for our development processes, we have, again, with a monolith and multiple server types, to fully test an instance, a dev instance of our application or monolith, there's actually, I think, we're up to maybe 38 different types of servers in there. Part of that is because we have some redundancy, because we have to test zero downtime. We have to test what it means to go from A to B, old to new code. But some of that is just we have, it's a larger monolith. So we can stamp those out pretty quickly. And our pipelines, with the flip of a variable, you can have it point to this environment or that environment, and then your builds get automatically pushed and deployed to those environments. So again, when a new component comes up, the team has a production-like sandbox that they can play with, and they can create, and it has all the components of a production deployment, from the Octopus to the same delivery balancer to the process to get things there, essentially. So the teams can build what they need out. They can have it code reviewed by the appropriate parties to make sure that what they've done is sane, and then we can move that up the environments to make sure that we have some consistency in moving things through that process. Are we perfect? No. There have been times where we start in the middle and work sideways, but those are getting fewer and further between. When I say that, I say like sometimes we might develop the automation package in QA because maybe a tight timeline or something like that, and then we kind of retro it, to both sides for production and team. But that's not the norm anymore. Again, trying to get people aligned with why that's important, so that they see the need for starting at the bottom and moving up.
Development has sort of
How much autonomy do you give the individual teams? Because you mentioned you use Octopus to deploy, right?
Yep.
So a lot of my teams, a lot of the teams in our firm use TeamCity and Octopus. Some of them want to use GitHub, and some people want to be on DevOps, and DevOps can do what Octopus does. So I'm curious how you select the tools you selected, and how much autonomy you give the individual groups to follow that path or to do what they think is right.
Good question. So part of the reason, so let me say this. Historically, we've been a Microsoft shop. And so picking Microsoft tool kind of makes sense. But as our environment was configured, historically our TFS environment was deployed in a domain that did not have access to our production or our upstream environments, QAD or production. And so that coupled with the fact that two different groups were maintaining those environments built a silo. So what did we do with that silo? We chose different tooling. That's why Octopus was chosen. One of the reasons it was chosen for our production deployments, whereas we were building, we had CIs and we had our team environments, those dev environments being built and had pipelines with TFS at the time. What we're doing now, though, and I love it, your question is actually great, because I heard from one of our automation leads recently, why aren't we just using Azure DevOps to build our pipelines for production deployment? So again, people are starting to recognize that maybe there's a better process and maybe better tools. And so I think that's awesome. The process change came when we were exploring what it takes to be a cloud-first organization, to leverage cloud architectures. And then the tooling decisions were made because it was the best tool, but somewhat because we already had installation of that on premise, and the value of another tool didn't make sense when we had something like that already that we were paying for licenses. So how much autonomy do we give people? we're not a full self-service shop yet when it comes to production deployments. I would love to get to the point where we start a pipeline, say, for our on-premise deployment, and it just has check gates, but it's fully augmented. We're not there yet. We're trying to move in that direction. In the dev environments, developers and development teams have full access, full autonomy. But it's kind of on them to let us know what they've changed, so that we can replicate those changes going up front, or at least review them to make sure they make sense. Our platform group that is focused on cloud development, they have a little more autonomy. They're kind of a group in and of themselves right now, figuring out the guardrails, like I said, but they're building out and figuring those things out for us. So I don't know if that directly answered the autonomy question, but
So 100% of the people at your firm are using the tools that you decided are the right tools?
okay. So yes and no. We have tools that we've recognized. There is some consistency that's very important. No matter what you're talking about, if it's agile versus waterfall, if it's a right wing versus left wing, extremes are very rare, right? You want to fall somewhere in the middle. So there are times where we've acquired a company and we've let them run with the tooling they have because it makes sense. And we may look at the value of converting them over to our tooling. We may not. Case in point, we have a team that we acquired many years ago, but they just started rebuilding the product that we acquired them for. And they're now migrating from a Jira GitHub platform to our Azure DevOps instance, because they can take advantage of the templates and the guardrails that we've set forth and don't have to build the wheel again. So that's an instance where it made sense. There's another team, they've pushed forward on the container front. It makes total sense for them to keep doing what they're doing for now. And it could be that we decide some of their tooling needs to come back into, there's value in their tooling and their process of coming back into, say, mainstream. So in terms of that type of the autonomy to pick whatever makes sense, we try to be flexible, but you also have to avoid pockets of risk, if that makes sense, where people are so far out on their own that the fact that they're on their own tooling means that if one or two people get sick, that part of the business comes to a standstill, or it starts delaying their deliveries because they have to do more than what the other teams have to do. Why reinvent the wheel? Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
So a lot of times you see kind of people's DevOps journey, one of the things they look at is kind of the post-production team type of thing. So it's the application monitoring, operations, those type of things. And then there's, there's roles that have been, new roles that have started to be defined, the site reliability engineers. Do y'all have any of that put in place or thoughts on it?
I do. And I kind of, when you said that, I kind of look at, again, going back to shared services and silos. We try to empower our dev teams as much as possible. And so in that context, or maybe even in the context of, say technical debt and things like that, if there's not some aspects of the team owning something, you might push something live, again, different priorities. If you have a site reliability group, let's just go to that extreme. If you have that group, they may not be able to get to your alerting and monitoring until a week, 2, 3 months after you deploy. You could have stuff going on that's impacting your customers that you don't know about. So I have architects that are in every one of those solution groups, and they are the ones that are accountable for making sure that monitoring, alerting, performance, all that is considered. In fact, what I've done is I've developed kind of what I call a solution design checklist, but it's really just a memory jogger of those things you need to consider whenever you're pushing something out. So the team that knows the code and the solution, like the back of their hand, they are going to be the best ones to figure out what really needs to be alerted and monitored, what really makes sense for their products. But the other thing about that is whenever emergencies happen, I'm a true believer in, let me say it this way, If you wake up a developer or a dev team at 1 a.m. every night because they made a mistake in their code, I don't care what's on their roadmap, they're gonna figure out how not to be woken up every night at 1 o'clock. So along that same concept, there's an appropriate amount of pain that should be felt by the teams. Again, hopefully failing fast, but that drives some accountability. So again, if the team delivers a solution and it wasn't monitored, or there's something happened that's causing them a little pain, they won't do that the next time because, oh yeah, that's right. We didn't think about that last time. Perspectives and getting a better solution. If you have one perspective out here that's a site reliability engineer, I'm not saying there's not merit in somebody thinking about that, but they're just one perspective. That perspective needs to collaborate with your other teams to make sure the right solution is formed. My opinion. Other questions? Keep talking. We'll tell you that.
It's like we're 1 o'clock on the dot, so appreciate that.